Welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. And today's episode, I was really excited for Lamont to come over because I was referred to him by a good friend of mine, Shawn Finnegan. So, Shawn, if you're watching, thank you for that introduction. Anyone that Shawn brings into my life is someone I need to spend time with because he doesn't hold people close to him just recklessly. He has the best people around him. And I strive to be the same way. I strive to hold the best people around me. And meeting Lamont was like, oh my gosh, this is another beautiful connection. I've been in the mental diagnostic, the self-development space for a while now. And you know what? I've come to learn something. It's like a shower. One episode of showering doesn't keep you clean for the rest of your life, just like one piece of work on your brain or one seminar or one retreat or one personal development book keeps you sane and functioning your entire life. Because we are creatures that are ever growing and evolving, our minds ever grow and evolve. And if we are not careful, our minds can pick up things that we don't want. So in this episode, I really just got vulnerable with them and be like, you know what, this Sunday, I had this experience and I want you to psychoanalyze me on this one. I want you to help me break down and help me understand why I did the things that I did, which is really, why do any of us do the things that we do? You see, here's the thing. Any time we're encountering an addiction or a symptom, anything like an eating disorder or a porn addiction or whatever it is, these are symptomatic. When you watch these commercials about all of these medications that are available, it's funny because they're talking about things that treat symptoms and then they create other symptoms. But we need to understand at the root, why are we having these symptoms to begin with? If I have an eating disorder, what is causing me to go to the eating disorder for comfort? If I have an addiction, what is causing me to go to the addiction for comfort? What's going on at the root? So we not only hit the root, we hit the subroot. And frankly, there's a lot more to what LaMonte is sharing. So I want you to check out the show notes on this show to see what he's up to. If there's some questions in your mind, you're curious, or you want to see more of what he's doing, check those out in the show notes. He gave us a really cool discount code for all the stuff that he's doing, especially the live events. So that's in the show notes. But if you have a friend who you do personal development with, they're part of your community, they're part of your network, share this episode with them. And if you're getting this episode from a friend, make sure you reach out and tell them thank you, because that friend was thinking of you today. Check it out. Well, I was really excited when Shawn introduced us because, you know Shawn.
Yeah.
He only has
Please go to that.
the best people in his back pocket. I was just stoked. So I asked Shawn, hey, who do you know? I need some really high-level people on the show. I really want some brilliant brains, because my favorite way to introduce, the way Shawn does, just keep these people in my back pocket, is to put them on my podcast and share you with all of my friends.
Yeah.
So I've met some pretty darn incredible people on the show. And, you and I have never met in person before, but I know enough about you because we've seen each other online. And then an endorsement from Shawn is shout out to Shawn Finnegan, because he's the man, the myth, the legend. Anything from Shawn is like world class.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was stoked to run
Shawn
into
and
you.
Debbie.
Yeah, right?
Those
right?
guys are a duo.
Yeah. I don't know what Debbie's doing nowadays. Is she, she's kind of been on her own journey. She's been in Mexico for weeks.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I haven't followed her that much, but I did notice that she's in a foreign country somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to connect with her about maybe another teen event or whatever it was. And she's like, I'm going to be in Mexico for 4 weeks discovering myself. And I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Okay. Let me know who you are when you get back. I love her. So, okay. So when I started studying through your Instagram and the bio you sent me in the course Shawn's introduction, you really have a new approach to mindset and to mental health, which so much of our mental health has been tested over the last, since 2020, since we were so isolated. And I don't care which side of the fence you're on with, COVID and all this garbage, it was taxing on everybody.
Yeah.
It was taxing on the kids and it was taxing on the families. It was taxing on marriages. And I think that we have maintained or retained poor habits. If left unchecked, they cause this canker. So mental health has been, it's been an issue, but it's because it's so nebulous. If my leg is broken, I can see it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If my brain is not functioning, that's hard to pick up on.
Yeah.
Right? So tell me your perspective.
Yeah.
On that.
And actually, the way I see COVID is it opened our eyes.
Yeah.
Because I think that more people struggle than we know. and more people struggle than they know. Like the level of enmeshment that they have in society and in the communities that they're brought up in, and the control it has over them is becoming more and more we've become more enlightened. We're starting to see the light because we have gone through pain. We've gone through more suffering. So COVID brought up the suffering, which increased the desire to move towards the understanding of self and to break from the enmeshment.
To define this word enmeshment for me, because all I can think of is the mesh on my window screens.
Yeah. So enmeshment is a psychological term for when a community is created. A community is created because of commonalities, right?
Right. We could even be so micro as like a Facebook group to a neighborhood, right?
Yeah, or a family.
Okay.
Or a religion, or a political party. It could be anything that is a group of people, and they come together because of commonalities. It's our nature when we have people come into our commonalities that we create an atmosphere that keeps them in.
Okay. I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I'm like,
unknowingly, we create this language around it that keeps them anchored into the community and keeps them from leaving. And even so much so that if someone were to leave, they would feel an enormous amount of potentially shame, guilt, but really judgment and severance of the relationship.
which is so scary. It's a really dangerous thing. And I want to put a microscope on the socio-religious culture that we live in geographically,
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine who went to BYU, which is, if you want to look at a petri dish, that's a great one, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
There is a tight-knit community.
Right? So we've got all of these things. We've got education as a unifier. We've got religion as a unifier. We've got all of these things as this unifier that we're talking about, right? The culture, all of this. There's so many layers to it. And a friend of mine had a daughter that went there who had a really terrible, terrible, terrible incident happen where she was a victim of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
And she was honest about it and then got removed from the school. Which now she's losing her social connections. Now she's losing her religious connections. Now she's even at risk of losing family connections, depending on how that's received or the news is received. And arguably, she's not at fault, right? And
which actually is irrelevant.
It is irrelevant.
It's irrelevant if it's her fault or not.
This whole, and I'm going to probably take a tangent here, but I'm curious as to your take on this. This whole disincentive to be honest. When you talk about these cultures, because the risk of being ostracized from the culture is so much that we are willing to be dishonest with ourselves and within the culture. And it becomes a part of the culture.
You nailed it. We're dishonest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we don't see.
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Listen, I'm interrupting my own show because I want to give you something. Now, you guys all want to get on more stages. I've got a free resource for you of stages that are just clamoring for guests. They need guests on a daily, weekly, sometimes monthly basis. This is my podcast database. Now, what I'm going to do is have you go to mariannhickman.com/database. Once you put in your information there, I'm going to send this to you totally for free. Open up this database. You're going to click through it, find the next podcast that's relevant to your topic, hit the application button, show up on their podcast, get in front of their people, and share your content. Remember, mariannhickman.com/database. Let's get you unlocked.
There's a thing called scotoma, where something is right in front of you, but you don't see it because of the consequences of seeing it.
Tell me an example.
Before it even happens.
Yeah.
Right? So in other words, we don't find our true authentic self because we have been programmed and entrenched in this enmeshment that if that comes out, we're going to be not only rejected, but we're going to lose so much of what we call of how our brain meets its chemical needs. So the way that we see this model that we use to help people is designed around the concept that our brain is functioning off neurochemicals, and all it cares about is getting those neurochemical needs met.
That's true.
And so in our development, in our child development and in our adult development, as our brain is going along, it's learning how to do that.
Yes. My 2-year-old is going through that right now.
Yeah. And so, and we continue to do it throughout our whole entire lives. And when we have these communities that have this tendency to want us to believe in their direction and their way and be like us, then that programming that goes in doesn't allow the balancing, and I know this is a weird way to say it at this point, but the balancing of neurochemicals, in other words, to take a different belief system than what's been presented, because that one creates all the chemicals needed for the brain. It's been trained how to meet the neurochemicals.
So
of the brain.
we're satisfied within a silo, essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So, and that makes us do what? Are we just not questioning, or what happens if the silo gets punctured? Right.
Yeah, that makes us hide what's inside of us, what our nervous system is trying to teach us, and who we are. Our true, authentic self is being pushed back for the sake of society.
The sake of the tribe
group,
or the community.
The community that we're in, or the communities.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And oftentimes, and especially in our culture, they're stacked communities.
Yes.
So we stack one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And then there's this, maybe you have a workplace that has a whole group of people. They're all enmeshed in the same communities with the same beliefs. And it just amplifies and intensifies the nervous system's hesitance to be true to ourselves.
Dude, okay, so I have to just analyze this story for me, okay? So I felt this, what you're talking about, so profoundly. I didn't know I was feeling it because I didn't know what this was, right? I went to a work retreat back with the company I used to work for, and on the way, I took a picture in the airport, kind of one of those, like, this is what Instagram sees, this is what reality is, kind of a picture, before and after. And the reality was I was in my pajamas, at the gate, not perfect, no makeup, sipping a cup of coffee. And then there's like the Instagram perfect with them facing the lighting and all this stuff. And I posted it, got a lot of traction. People love seeing the more authentic versus the facade that we put out there. And I get out there to the work retreat, and now I'm experiencing this enmeshment that you're talking about. So at the work retreat, my boss like pulled me aside and said, "You need to take that post down." I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Because you're having a cup of coffee." And I was like, "What?" And that doesn't represent our company values. It doesn't represent our religious values. It doesn't represent all of these things. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And I did it. I pulled it down because I was so scared to lose my job over a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
Because of the enmeshment of the common society that he was trying to market to.
Yeah.
So he's marketing to a society who has a belief system that and by the way, this increases judgment.
Thank you for addressing this. Dive into this. Yes.
It increases the judgment of other people. It amplifies our biased judgment, because when we're in a community that has common beliefs, it amplifies our belief being the true one, like the real one. Because
we're getting this validation, these other
it becomes our world because it takes our focus on it more and more. It's just like our algorithms on our phones. Our algorithms on our phones are creating massive division because our phones, everybody who's on our phone, their only purpose is to get us to stay on the phone.
Yes.
That's all they care about.
Doesn't matter the platform.
Nothing matters. It's just stay on longer. That's how they make money. That's how they provide value, or that's how, like, it's you stay on longer. And if you think every single app and every single thing you're using is to get you on it.
It's so true. Everything all the apps that I download have gamified everything, right? I have a mental health app that's gamified mental health. I get little rewards and all these little gems and jewels for doing my thing. And I was like, wow, they got me.
Yeah.
But I don't know that that's all bad.
No, it's not necessarily bad if you choose it.
Right.
And not if you're programmed into it, or you go there because of fears of, in our language, not being able to meet chemical needs. So it is meeting our chemical needs. That's what it's doing. That's what draws us in.
Tell me these chemicals. Are we looking for dopamine, serotonin? What are the chemical needs?
Yeah, all of them. All of the neurotransmitters, right? Yeah. So we're talking neurotransmitters here. And our brain, that's all it cares about. So every belief system we have, every perspective we adhere to, everything that they're all neurotransmitters getting needs met. That's all they are.
Yeah. How would you define? Okay, I love that we're talking the science of this with the neurotransmitters. There's chemicals that's trackable. We can see it. It's something we can prove. But then there's the other side of the equation, or maybe it's the same side of the equation, but we talk about it differently. This sense of fulfillment.
Hmm.
What is fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a great question, because neurologically, fulfillment means that you've balanced out all of the neurochemicals at the level that the nervous system wants them.
Okay, so is
And
your
an
nervous system?
addiction,
Yeah.
an
Okay. Yes.
addiction, and all these other emotions and feelings and experiences we have that are repetitive but don't serve us,
Yeah. Yeah.
those are they're a incomplete version of attempting to balance the chemical.
Kind of a counterfeit.
It's a counterfeit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the junk food. It's like the candy of the dietary food.
Yep. It's the
Like,
mental junk food.
yeah, it's mental junk food. It's not complete. And therefore, the brain says, well, I'm not completing. So what do I need? I need more.
Uh-huh.
I
Now we
need
have
more
escalation.
of the same. And
Yeah.
and that's where escalation comes from. And that's where the cycle comes from that creates addiction.
Whether it's your phone, or whether it's porn, or whether it's drugs, or whether it's alcohol, it's this escalation of the brain thinking it has a complete element, not having a complete element. So in pursuit of it, it just needs more.
Yeah. And I'll go
Wow.
so far as to say it's feeling sad. It's feeling angry. It's feeling frustrated.
And calling those addictions?
Those are all addictions.
Okay, let's dive into this, because there's this righteous indignation
Mm.
or justification that I know I've leaned into
Mhm.
of holding on to anger or holding on to resentment because somehow it gives me a serotonin boost. Like, what is that?
Yeah, it gives you and the only reason you do it is because something led to a deficit in those neurochemicals, and your child brain knew how to fill them through anger, frustration,
This
doubt,
justified,
self-doubt.
yeah.
I mean, it's all those things. It's judgment, it's self-doubt, all the emotions that we have that we don't like to have. Our nervous system's constantly talking to us, and we stuff it aside and we ignore it, but it's telling us all the time. And if it's an emotion we don't like to feel, then it's telling us that our wiring is off. The way that we meet chemical needs, our perspective of that scenario or situation, the meanings that we give it, the stories we tell are off. Like, we don't have to feel any of those things. What we do goes against a lot of mainstream concepts and ideas.
Well, and you talk about the fly method. Explain that to me.
Yeah. So the fly method is basically people learning about this neurology, about their nervous system in a way where they can understand its language, so that they and foundationally it's an understanding of a logic or a way to see how we're experiencing our thoughts. So it's literally a foundational change to the way that we think.
So when I hear you explain nervous system, I see you point to your core so much, and that's very telling, because the nervous system runs from our brain. We're talking, physical things here. Runs from our brain. Our spinal cord puts out our nerves, which then control our movements. And what you're making me think of is the beliefs that are, at least in my opinion, measurable if you have the right instrument, but not a lot of us do. A thought is just electrons moving around. Anyway, so if we take our thoughts and then we have this nervous system, that is literally the system that makes us do things, makes me move my hands, makes me walk my feet. And that is the bridge. When we say our thoughts become our actions, it's the way our nervous system is responding to how we think. Do I have that right?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yes. And it's the way we think, and the way we call it the obstacle course of thought that every thought has to pass through.
Okay.
So we have an obstacle course that every thought has to pass through. So what we teach people is we teach them about that obstacle course and how to make changes to it, to find the flaws in the obstacle course of thought, so that when they think, it's a different experience. It's a totally different experience. As a matter of fact, it's so foundationally shifting to their whole world. I tell people you're gonna feel like you're on a different planet when you learn this, because you're gonna learn that you are so enmeshed and so programmed into society and into our social norms and all these different things that you're gonna see this world as a totally different place.
That's a little scary.
It can be scary, and that is one of the things that we address early on.
Yeah.
Because it would be scary to someone who doesn't understand what's coming.
Yeah.
And this is what scary is. Scary is the brain's realization that it may not be able to meet chemical needs if something happens.
Yeah, if my situation changes, there's this feeling of, but at least it's familiar.
Yeah.
At
but
least it's known.
See, and familiar and known are neurochemicals. As a matter of fact, it's dopamine. Dopamine
Really?
is the I know it chemical, or it's the chemical that says I can predict and I can know what's happening. I can know what's coming. It's the precursor to all action.
Okay, so when you say that, I was just watching NCIS, right? And thank God
Yeah.
this situation has never happened to me, but there was an episode about a woman in an abusive relationship.
Mhm.
And she didn't leave because it was a known.
Yes.
Are you telling me that dopamine is playing a part in her experience even when she's being brutally beat?
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
And it was
What?
programmed. It was likely programmed when she was a child and her
Uh-huh.
brain was first developing. And her brain was trying to find oxytocin, which is the connection and love neurotransmitter. And the way that she was treated, the only way, for whatever reason, her brain captured that way of being treated that felt love. So she
Okay.
got love felt from that thing. And we talk about in relationships how we self-sabotage all the time.
Yep.
And we draw people into our lives we don't want and we don't like.
Because
draw
of
in
this little
relationships,
dopamine wheel.
And it's because of dopamine's one of them. There's more. So when you learn the whole thing, you get a lot
I
better
keep
picture of it.
I need to shut up.
But that's one of them we're using as an example of how our brain is meeting the chemical needs of the brain because of its patterns, because of its programming that leads to all these things. And we have much more control over the people around us than we think. And the reason is because they are programmed to meet their chemical needs through other people's behaviors, actions, words, thoughts, beliefs, judgments, and whatever. And so what we do influences tremendously, almost to the level of controls what other people do.
Oh, I felt that big time.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So this programming, this whole program, the FLY program, is about learning foundationally how all this works so that you can do the simple and easy process of reprogramming.
So in order to reprogram, I need to know what the operating system is currently doing.
Yes.
And
its nature.
Exactly. And understanding its nature and what it's doing and the interpretation of that behavior. Do I like it? Do I not?
Yeah.
Because for me personally, I have been, especially in the last probably, 6 weeks since the beginning of the year, I've been in search of this nebulous feeling of fulfillment. Right? And so I'm trying to define, and I'm back in the lab, and I'm just like, did I like that? Did I not? Did that mean I was fulfilled? Or was that just fun in that moment? And it's crazy. I feel like a child all over again, trying to understand myself.
Yeah, because something's shifted in your environment that has taken away what your common stuff was. You've challenged your beliefs enough that your brain is like, what do I do now? So, because I'm in a new thing, a new phase, a new whatever. So it searches back into its childhood and says, where's that programming I was using? Where is it? And then it finds it. As a matter of fact, this is how trauma happens.
Yeah, it sounds like you're speaking to trauma. Yeah.
It's the same way that trauma happens. As a matter of fact, one of the ways that I came up with this, some of the key points to what I use and what I do was studying trauma. Because if you want to talk about reprogramming very fast and effectively, it's trauma, it's traumatic experiences. It's that, that car accident or that horrible, kidnapping or attack or whatever the thing is, or abuse from a close relative or whatever the thing is, that is what it literally just like charges up the system in a certain way that creates neuroplasticity like nothing else.
Yeah.
So what we do is I reverse engineered that and then put it in a way that is non-threatening, but gives people the opportunity to choose into. Because that's literally all this enmeshment and all these things we've been talking about, these control centers, they're all stealing our agency. They're all taking away our agency. And there's a lot of research out there that says that we're all in a micro trance.
Oh,
We are not exercising agency at hardly any level. Most research is around like 95% of our thoughts are just automated responses to all of our past programming.
Oh,
And
I believe that.
sometimes a new version of it.
Yeah.
And we give the illusion that we're making choices and that we're choosing in and out of things and whatever, but we're really not. We're just playing out. It's all predictable.
That's why people say we're in a, what do they call it? a simulation
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Yeah, because there's these suggestions or even hypnotic
Yeah.
elements to our experience, and that's terrifying too. Because if we think we're choosing and we're not, we're like, what the hell?
Yeah. That's exactly it. It is what the hell, because we are jacked up. After learning this, I looked around and said, holy crap, the level of programming that goes on, the level of unawareness to even the people who claim to be very aware and woke about all, their stuff. They're still so far from what they're actually capable of being a being of agency and choice consistently. Because and in this model, by understanding this construct of thinking, we can't help but step aside and watch our experience. So we almost become a third person experiencer to help us in our first person figure out what's going on in our head so that we can make changes to it and make shifts and exercise that agency to do something about it at a level that I've never seen anywhere.
Yeah.
We've had a massive amount of success with helping people, and miraculous stories, hundreds and hundreds of not just, it changed my life. We're talking foundational, massive shifts.
Yeah.
And oftentimes this nervous system that's controlling all these physical ailments going on also responds, and we see physical ailments just dissipate that
That's
people
crazy.
have had for years and years and years.
I'm a big believer that trauma carried in the body produces dis-ease.
Yeah.
Right. These ailments. That book, that Feeling Buried Alive, Never Die. Love that book.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you one of the common things out there that we're attempting to do as a society is we're trying to relieve that pain or that suffering. We're saying, okay, so I'm holding on to this trauma. I'm holding on to this thing. I need relief from it.
Yeah.
So people do a lot of what they call healing. Say, let's heal from this. Let's heal. But our perspective is you have a wound for a reason, and that is to change your nervous system. And you can go, and it's okay if you want to relieve that or let it go, but it's just going to come back until you change the nervous system, until you change the perspectives and belief systems that keep bringing that wound back. In other words, you got to figure out where that knife is that's causing the wounds and change that knife into a massage
massage gun.
A little massaging tool, because we don't have to suffer. Suffering is absolutely an option once you see the option.
Yeah.
Suffering is not an option until your brain can comprehend that it has a choice. And until it comprehends that there's a choice, it'll just stay stuck in its patterns that it's in.
So when I hear you say this, I'm reminded of something I went through just on Sunday with myself. So we were going to church. I've got my 2-year-old. He hates not being able to take a nap. I hate him not being able to take a nap. Like it was probably an hour and 40 minutes of screaming on Sunday.
Yeah,
like
at least.
Oh my gosh. And when I hear you talk, I'm like, okay, we have the social contract if there can't be a baby screaming in the chapel. So we have to take the baby out of the chapel. And then there's social contract of then it's story time and then it's toy time and all of these things that have to be and all of this. And then I got to the point where I was that my trigger point, the wound for me was feeling a lack of control. I don't want to necessarily exert control over my son.
Oh, yes, you do.
Well, maybe I do. Well, maybe a bit. But
and you know how I know?
Yeah.
By your language. Because you said you hate it. And you spoke in a way that made you feel like you were under control from someone else. And
my
you were
little
projecting
2-year-old
that need.
butthole boss was being a little butthole.
Yeah, but it wasn't him controlling you. It was the society that you were in and all your beliefs around it.
Yeah.
That made you feel like you didn't want to deal with this.
Well, and I don't care if when we brought him home and he kept screaming, I was like,
yeah,
at least we're at home. He's in his environment. I can walk to the other room where I don't get, overstimulated by it and he can play with his toys. But being away from home and without the ability to escape, right? Because my husband was in the other room with a car key. I was like, now I'm not in control of this enmeshment, I think is the right term. I'm not in control of the the sound, the noise level. I can't even leave of my own free will because, and though my husband's like not withholding leaving from me, but I have to go through an extra step. I have to find him. I have to text him. We have to get in the car. And if I had the car key, I would have just been like, oh, I'm going to go drive him around. I'll pick you up. And then I would have had some semblance of this thing, this control.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as we got home, I lost it because the straw that broke the camel's back was we have a stupid TV remote that doesn't work. It's been kicking around the laundry room. It's been kicking around the bathroom. It's been kicking around the floor. And I kept tripping over the damn thing like 5-6 times.
Until you needed it and then you couldn't find it.
Oh, well, yeah. That's why we have two, the non-working and the working one.
Yeah.
And so when I finally tripped over for the 10th time, I picked it up and I chucked it hard. It shattered into many, many pieces. I'm still finding pieces. And I was like, I just lost it. Now I'm losing control again. And then all the embarrassment and the shame. And I mean, that I'm still like... making up for that, I think. Like, don't hate me, Richard.
and
no
your
need to
nervous
make up
system.
anything. It's
And
okay.
your body is holding on to all that because it wants you to figure it out. It says, hey, there's a totally different way to do this. It's so absolutely abstract from anything you've ever considered that you could have a completely peaceful, enjoyable, loving, kind, fulfilling moment with all the exact same things happening.
And seeing my brain didn't know that because first thing in the morning, I'm like, I don't even want to go to church today. I don't want to do this because I have a feeling of what's coming. And maybe I self-manifested it or self-created it. Who knows? But I felt it coming. So I didn't know that my brain was looking for something different. My brain was just terrified of what might happen.
Yeah, it's literally constructs of society that are still playing out in your head. That when you get to the foundation of how this gets all created and how it gets all put in, you will freaking laugh at yourself.
Walk me through it, coach. Put me through the fly method, whatever you got to do, because that was a nightmare.
So here's the thing. The process of doing the reprogramming is super simple and easy, and anyone can do it. After they have a deep understanding of how all this works. Until then, it's a war. It's a whole... Everybody's trying to do it. We got all these people out there. We got therapists and we have all these coaches and we have these healers and we have all these methodologies and modalities to do all these things. And they don't really work. They sort of can work if they luck out. If something happens to fall into place, if they just happen to, it can appear to work.
Yeah, my friend Heather was just talking about this.
Yeah.
Modality that didn't work. Yeah.
Yeah. And the definition of it working is that, especially in mainstream, psychology and therapy and counselors and all them, their measurement of working is if there's some measurable improvement. But their statistics around it working and having some measurable improvement are dismal. Like, it is horrible. There's not a very good. Our measurement is that it completely transforms someone's life.
So that if the trigger or stimulus comes back,
there is no trigger.
So you cut the power to the trigger button.
You cut the power. There is nothing.
There's no response
because
there's
the power
no
goes
trigger.
completely into them.
Wow.
And they become the one that analyzes and assesses the situation to gather data that benefits them so they can meet all of their goals and become the person they want to be.
And see, I've met people like this.
Yeah.
They're peaceful without arrogance, which is a rare combination because a lot of peaceful people, air quotes for those of you that are not seeing this, peaceful people that I know are super condescending. And they're like, I'm at peace because I'm better than you. So
because I've succeeded on the outside.
Yeah.
Because here's the issue. Society, the way society and communities work is they work off of function. So in other words, their judgment and all their language and everything is about function on the outside. That means how someone performs, right? And we're all taught from when we were little kids to perform. We're taught to do things the way that we're being taught to do them.
Ace the test.
Yeah.
Figure that math problem out.
Yeah. And then we grow up and we're like, okay, so how do we achieve this thing? And it's all about the achievement of the thing. And then we're like, I got to learn how to do it. So then we take courses on how to do it. We say, okay, or we go to school, we go to college, whatever. It's how to do. And it's the same thing in relationships. We meet someone and we want to be around. We're attracted to them. So then we want to be the person that they're attracted to.
Yeah. And is that in alignment with your true self? That's the question.
And it comes from our parents and us parents, by the way,
Uh-huh.
wanting our kids to be or do or function.
My poor son's wife.
To function on the outside to make society happy or to make everyone else happy.
Yeah.
And as children, as our parents are doing this, we're starting to get this understanding that we are actually in control of other people's experience. So now we're responsible, especially as children, of our parents' experience. If our parents upset or whatever they're feeling, by the way, it doesn't matter what we show on the outside. It matters what we feel on the inside.
Oh, those kids are smart. They know.
Yeah, they're beyond smart. Their brains are so in sync with the frequencies the brain runs on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I always tell people there's always two conversations in every conversation. There's a conscious one and a subconscious one.
Yep, totally agree.
And the kids are really tuned in to the subconscious
Man, my
one.
daughter, she knows. She's smart.
They know.
I'll just walk through.
So-
She's like, "What's wrong, Mom?"
Yeah. So as parents, you can't hide behind your bedroom door. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everything is out in the front for them.
Yeah.
And so as we teach them this, they start to feel the weight of the world on themselves. We all did this as we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt the weight of the world on ourselves as the responsible person for the world. For everyone we
kind
contact.
of a lot.
Kinda?
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what starts to repress our true self and our authenticity. We're constantly trying to serve the world or the way that making everyone else feel good, and some people, and there's language around this, right? Codependence and people pleasing and all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you that those typical conversations are not even remotely touching the surface of how deep this is inside of us.
Yeah.
How intensely a foundational part of how we experience life this is. Because when we pull this thing out from under people, man, they completely change.
Yeah,
And
pull it
the
out from
people
under me,
around
coach.
them
Like,
see it.
dude, like, because I've been stuck in this thing of all of the things that I thought I wanted. I wanted rather.
Yeah.
I don't care about them anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I did a bikini competition a couple of years ago, and I was like, I'm going to do this one, then I'm going to do this one, and I want to get first, and then my third one, and all this. And then I got off stage, and it was over, and my body was like, what the crap was that? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay, now I know I don't want that. That's not fulfillment.
That was a pursuit
Now what?
of something that was programmed into you to
Yeah.
think that you were going to attain some kind of neurological experience.
Sure.
But this is what we call prediction error.
Okay.
So there's a thing in neuroscience called dopamine prediction error. And what that means is that it's not about what happens. It's about what we thought was going to happen compared to what happens.
Okay.
By our perception, right?
Okay.
So if we pick up a chocolate cake, and we've eaten chocolate cake before, the amount of dopamine that we get from biting into that chocolate cake is directly related to what we predict based off of past experiences that's going to be. So we could bite into that chocolate cake, and maybe it turns out to be strawberry instead of chocolate.
It's the raisin versus the chocolate chip cookies. It was a freaking raisin the whole time.
And when we bite into what we thought was chocolate and it's strawberry, even if strawberry is our favorite, we will have a response to that that's very negative.
Because we're not getting what we anticipated.
Because we're not getting what we anticipated. It has nothing to do with the chocolate cake or the strawberry.
Yeah.
In other words, all of life experiences have nothing to do with what actually happens. They have to do with what our programming is around it and what it expects out of it. And so that prediction of what's going on is controlling all of our experience. So if we're unhappy, or if we're sad, or if we're happy, or whatever the emotion is based off of what our brain was programmed to predict or see or think was going to be there when we got there. It has nothing to do with what we actually arrived at or what actually happened on the outside. It's all about us trying to meet our chemical needs through and one of them is dopamine. I'm only using one as an example.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it would take too long to go through all of them. But when you do go through all of them and you start to understand each one of them, it changes everything. Like everything is to meet chemical needs. That's it. That's all we're doing.
That sounds so
people,
basic.
People talk about safety. They always say, "Oh, we're trying to be safe. We're trying to be safe."
Yeah.
That's literally a program. There's no safety. We don't have there. Everything is safe Compared to what? Compared
Yeah.
to what are we not safe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Compared to, our past history of all of our ancestors? Like, there's not much that can happen to us that we can do anything about nowadays. Hardly
Ain't that
anything.
the truth?
Most danger that's out there, we really can't do very much at all to change, because we have created such a safe society, like incredibly safe. As a matter of fact, I could tell the whole story about how our whole society in the United States and the world around enmeshed us into belief systems from the corporations that want us to think a certain way to get us to do what they want us to do.
Mm-hmm.
All the way from the milk cartons showing all of the missing children when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
that created all the programming in the parents to want to keep their kids safe,
Mm-hmm.
that led the parents to want their kids to come off the streets, which kept their kids away from the groups of friends that they were in without supervision, so their brain could develop in a way that made them capable to handle risk and to make decisions and to understand the consequences of their decisions. Now they're under their
Oh, what a
parents.
crazy train.
Their parents start, hovering over their children. And then the internet comes out and the parents start lawn mowing. They mow everything over before the kid gets there. And the kid has no experience. Their brain does not develop. And by the way, you know what the rate of kidnapping was from strangers at the time, in the days when they had
The milk
it
carton
on
days.
the milk cartons?
What was it?
In the United States, there was less than 150 kidnappings a year
Wow.
that were from a stranger.
Yeah.
It was always about strangers.
Yeah.
Right?
Stranger danger.
In other words, most of them were, disputes and divorce or relatives or whatever. Like, and yet they amplified this feeling beyond reality. Like, it was so distorted. 150 kidnappings in a year is not even statistically, it doesn't even statistically exist. In other words, we can't use that data to gather, to make any decisions.
Yeah. There's not enough data points for
There's
that.
not enough data points.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
literally didn't exist. It's almost
Yeah.
like it didn't exist, but they amplified it as if, right, that it was going to be this huge thing. And then when television came out, parents were like, oh, sweet, they're safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all know where that went.
Yeah.
Because what did that do? That went to the inside of what they were, how they were programmed, and started to play with what was going on inside. And, then video games came out at home.
Mm-hmm.
We had them at the arcade, and then they came out at home.
Oh, I remember when my sister got Mario at home. I was so
Yeah.
stoked. I was like, we can play
And
this
guess
at
where
home.
the highest suicide rates are?
No way.
It's from men at the age group that grew up with video games in their home.
That's
where the highest
tell me the
suicide
difference,
rates are.
because there's when we talk about specifically video games, for us, for my husband and I, it is a social thing.
Mhm.
We limit our kids' screen time and use the screen time to an hour unless you're with friends.
Yeah.
And if we say, if your friends are coming over and you're I don't care how long you play video games as long as you're playing with your friends. And
Yeah.
we watch them fight and we watch them duke it out, like sometimes physically, and we're just like, in the best days, we're just like, let's just see what happens.
And it has to be in the room,
Yes,
right?
when
They
the room
can't
that
be
we're in.
virtually with their friends on
Yes,
screens.
Yes, they have to be
If their
coming
friends
over.
come over, I don't
Yeah.
care if they're on screens. They're socializing,
Yeah.
At least we think so.
Yeah.
right? I mean, it
Same.
is.
Yeah.
In one way or another, they're socializing. They're
Yeah.
with their friend. I did that all the time as a kid.
Yeah.
That's how I spent my childhood with my friends.
Yeah.
If I wasn't outside doing something stupid, I was
We need more of
inside.
that.
I was
Yeah.
inside playing a video game with my friends.
I think we need more
Yeah.
outside doing stupid things.
Outside and stupid. That's where
I
the key is.
definitely agree with that. There should be more of that, but
Going through stupid to get to smart is about the only way to do it. And I'm going to go back to something you said earlier that's really valuable. You said you've met people who have this way of thinking, living, and seeing where they are just fulfilled, and you can see it, and they're constantly focused on everyone else and lifting everyone else and doing
Shawn
things.
is one of those people.
Shawn is one of those people. He's
Yeah.
he's an exact example. Now, I will challenge you to find one of those who didn't go through shit,
That's the thing,
get it.
right?
right?
We have to. If we want to get stronger, we go to the gym, and the gym freaking sucks.
And here's the thing. My goal is to show people before they have to go through the suffering and the pain, how they can make it happen without all that. In other words, if you just live organically on this planet and you just do what society has taught us, to challenge all those things, you're going to have to go through some deep, serious suffering and pain over a very long period of time, not even just 1 or 2 times. It's going to have to be like over and over.
And
right?
there's no guarantees that you're going to swing out at the end.
And there's definitely not. The
Yeah.
majority don't.
Yeah.
The majority don't. It's rare that someone actually comes out the way that Shawn did, or
Yeah.
Tony Robbins, or Mel Robbins, or all these people that are out there just inspiring the world, right?
Right.
Hardly ever. What we're teaching is what that process is, so that because the reason that all of those happen is to create this neurological change within us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you learn how to create the neurological change within you, you don't have to have all that crap. You don't have to have all the suffering.
Well, doesn't suffering serve a purpose, though?
It absolutely does. And it's to change the nervous system.
Yeah, yeah.
As a matter of fact, suffering is the sign that the nervous system has changes to be made.
Okay.
It is the signal. It is the language coming to us saying there is something to change.
Yeah,
And once you change it, you don't need the suffering anymore.
yeah.
You don't need it. Now, there's an extensive number of messages coming from us to overcome, to change, to shift.
Yeah, yeah.
And the suffering is a signal that is teaching us. However, if we can learn to take the signal before it's extreme, before it's intense,
I call that
before it
God's
has
2
all
by
those
4.
things- Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If we can find it before that, that's so much better,
Yeah.
because then we're choosing into it.
And the tuition is not
purposefully.
nearly as expensive.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And we're using our own agency to choose into that becoming,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
To that identity, that new version of us, that thing. And there's nothing more rewarding. There's nothing more rewarding, because I as I've gone through this, and it's been a good, I don't know, 7 years or so since I created this model. And as I've gone through this, I'm an intense person. I have a lot of passion for things. When I do something, I do it crazy. I do
Yeah.
it crazy, outside of what more, it's beyond passionate. It's
Yeah, it's
insane.
obsessive.
Like, I'm obsessive, right? I have the ADHD, hyper-focused, super intense version.
It deserves
of
it if you're going to go
experiencing
for it. Why
things.
not?
Yeah, and so I dove into this thing, and my brain naturally is critical. It naturally criticizes and is critical
Mine does too.
of everything. And
Yeah.
so we spent years of in our family and the people close to me suffering with some severe, intense, complex stuff. And everything we did and everybody we tried barely had an impact. And when it did have an impact, it didn't last. But they would tell stories of people where it did and it worked and it did. And I'd always say, well, why, when it doesn't, why doesn't it? What's the missing piece?
Mhm.
So then I started diving into everything that I could possibly find in the mainstream, with taking courses from Yale. And by the way, you can take almost any psychology course in Yale for like $50.
Oh, wow.
If you just do it
Okay.
online.
I'm the Yale graduate right here.
And if you're not going for credit, they hardly charge you anything. If you're
Oh,
going for
God.
credit, then that thing just skyrockets
Oh, boy.
in price.
I got theories on that.
So,
but-
and I did things outside of the mainstream. I researched, and my whole question to every one of them is, when it doesn't work, why doesn't it work? What's your missing piece? Like what makes it so you're not getting to the core? Or in other words, what's creating the wound? Like what's missing for and that was my obsession. And I did that. And to make a long story short, I got in my own head about my own scenario, my own situation with business. And I'd been working all these jobs. I think I had 5 jobs in 7 years.
oh, man.
Selling software for these different software companies. And each one was a way to step up, right? You just keep, one way is just to shoot for the next job and get the next job and get the next one and get the next one. And I was going up this ladder. I was trying to make all this work. And I figured out what was going on in my head. And I left a career of 20 years with zero plan.
That's
I didn't even know what I was gonna
That's
do.
Robin Williams straight up
I
right
literally
there.
just
How
bounced.
exciting.
And I didn't have money in the bank. I had a house payment. I didn't have any other source of income. And it was such a freaking amazing thing to experience. And within just a few months, I had a business with 30 employees. I was making 7 times what I'd ever made, working
Wow.
half as much time. But I tell that story and everybody's like, whoa, how do you do that? How do you do
It's
that?
the how. Back to this
That's
how
what
again.
everybody's like.
Yeah.
It's the how. It's like, how do you get functioning on that level? And I tell them that was stupid easy compared to what I did after that. When I started to work with people that had severe like mental struggles, like not just sort of, we're talking personality disorder, we're talking lifelong issues,
Mm-hmm.
and working with people with TBIs, traumatic brain injuries,
Yeah. Yeah.
and being able to, in one day, watch them just shift their whole entire world and basically take that knife out of their hand and replace it with a new tool
Mm-hmm.
and change their life. And I would meet with people all day. I would go an entire day with
Man,
somebody.
that sounds so taxing.
And it
Rewarding, but
and people would say that.
yeah.
People would come in that were suicidal.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, I've done all kinds of work. This isn't, this is going to wear me out. I said, we'll start out and you watch the energy raise in that room. You watch it charge you up,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to discover things that your nervous system has been wanting you to know and understand, and has been screaming at you to learn and to understand your entire life. And when you get it, you're going to get jolts of energy. It's not going to be this, oh, I'm working through all my stuff.
Yeah.
It's blah, 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 all this stuff. I said, we are going to be laughing our heads off at the end of this session.
What a breath of fresh air.
And they would be like, I don't know, like I can't see that happening. I can't see that happen. And then at the end, I'd see, I told you.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, you're right.
Dang.
And I would often tell people at the end of that session, I would say, if I had a button I could press that would erase this from your memory, 100%, what would you give me to not press that button?
No kidding.
And it was really common for people to tear up and just say, you just completely changed my reality in every way and gave me the power to continue changing it. There was nothing. I would do anything to keep you from pressing that button. And I would do that for a reason, because then they would get clarity around what it was. Because their old self is going to fight. It's going to try to.
Those neural pathways were strong and
Yeah.
thick and super highways.
And it's going to try to like go back. It's going to try, but they're not going to be able to. It won't go back. People ask, how long does this last? So you ask anyone in our program, there is no freaking way they could ever let that go. It is too much power. It is too much understanding of self and what's going on. You ask anybody who's struggling, they're like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
These people will never say, I don't know what to do again, ever. They know exactly
Wow.
what's going on in their brain. They know what to do all the time. Does that mean they'll always do it? Not always. They're not going to always do it, but they're going to have the tools to assess themselves after the fact. They're also going to be taught not to use the typical way of thinking after they do something that they didn't intend or want,
Yeah.
which is to beat ourselves up and to judge ourselves and do all those things, because they're going to see how that doesn't make sense anymore. That's only going to be working against them. And so then they're going to take it and they're going to run with it. As a matter of fact, I had just to tell one quick story, I could tell hundreds of stories like this, but people with seizures, and the seizures are gone like that.
No
And
kidding.
they've had them for 20 years. People have had ulcers or something they couldn't figure out, a pain in them or something like that. Like I had eating disorders, like all kinds of stuff that just dissipate. And I say dissipate because we don't focus on the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just focus on the
Or
understanding.
the symptom.
Yeah.
You don't focus on
Because
the
they're
symptom.
the symptom.
Yes.
Because it's a function on the outside. The way the world sees it, like if you go in and they diagnose you with some, mental whatever, the way they do it is it's based off of not how you think, not how your brain's working, but how well you function on the outside. You don't get diagnosed with it unless it hampers your normal living.
It's crazy. I was watching, one of our favorite things to do while we're watching NCIS is make fun of these pharmaceutical commercials.
Oh, yeah.
They're so easy to make fun of because all the symptoms are way worse than the disease or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that while I was on a text thread with my sisters and all this stuff. And one of my sisters said, it's amazing how a diagnosis is not a diagnosis. A diagnosis is just a description of the symptom.
Yeah.
It's not a diagnosis.
It's not even a diagnosis.
You don't have an eating disorder. You're using an eating disorder to cover up something or to cope with something.
Exactly.
We need to figure out what is at the root that is causing the eating disorder or the porn addiction or whatever. Because
Yeah.
all of these things are symptoms. You don't have a
Yes.
porn addiction.
Yeah.
Something has you, and that's how you're treating it.
Yes. And so we would say, okay, so what is the beliefs that lead into that scenario? And we say, we go even deeper and say, what is the construct that creates the belief that leads into that thing?
Yeah.
So we
yeah.
can get really to the core. People talk about the core. Most people don't know what the core really is. There's another layer that's deeper. That's how we think. And to kind of finish the story that I started.
Oh, sorry.
This
I
lady
keep doing this thing. Yes.
that I met with, she 3 years after I met with her, she sent me an email, and she said, "I'm sure you don't remember me. We only met once, but it was all day at the neuro clinic, which is the clinic that I was at that worked on traumatic brain injury." And she said, "I was struggling in so many ways, and I was the one that had the bandages on my arm from self-harm
Yeah.
and suicide, and I had 2 kids at home, and I was so stuck." And she goes, "That day that we met absolutely, completely changed who I was. So much so that as I went through these last few years, life didn't get easy on the outside. As a matter of fact, it brought even deeper challenges with a son that ended up in the hospital, like for numerous things, lots of health issues, and then this and that." And she said, "But I have absolutely loved it. I have owned it. I have lived through it like I never could have imagined I could have gone through it the way that I have, like with this joy and hope and happiness and all these things." And she said, "And I'm reaching out to you because I want to write a book about it. And I want people to know what you teach. Like, I want your permission to share."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when people ask, like, how long does it last? It's like, if you learned how to grow a money tree, do you think you'd forget because of some event in your life or some challenge or some weakness? No, freaking never going to forget that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn how to grow a money tree,
You take care of that.
you're going to be growing a money tree. You're going to do it and the one thing you might not go and grow the money tree. You might not do all the stuff to grow the money tree, but you definitely will always remember how to grow the money tree.
Yeah.
It is not going to go away.
And that's one of the core elements of everything I desire in a relationship with self, and a relationship with my husband, and a relationship with my kids, that if or when rather shit hits the fan, we're good.
Yeah.
You know, let it happen. Let it happen. We're good. We're good with each other. We're good within ourselves. And I think that's what was missing for me in all of my achievements. This, I forget what you called it, the dopamine mask prediction. Yeah. I remember when I lost a bunch of weight and I was sitting on the splash pad, still comparing myself to all these other people. I'm like, I got what I wanted. Why am I not happy? Right. And
because your pattern was to compare yourself to others.
Exactly. And that's
didn't change. That's the one that didn't change. As a matter of fact, you were trying to satisfy that judgment of other people. So your attempt to go and be able to win a bikini contest or be in a bikini contest was your hope that you would sever the judgment, but you only amplified it. You supported it.
And now I'm competing with it.
And now you're
yeah, look how cool I am. But it's this desire that we all have that we know resistance will come, and I'm a believer that it needs to, because I don't know how to get strong without it.
Yeah.
However, when it does come, being able to, it sounds like what you have done is created a way to create this increase between stimulus and response.
Absolutely.
Right? We've increased the time between stimulus and response, and saying, I want to be proud of the way I go through this.
Yeah.
How do I be proud of the way I go through this? Because it's going to come. The waves are going to come. Circumstances are going to come beyond our control.
Yeah.
How do I want to go through it? And I want to go through it with my husband's hand in mine and a smile on my face.
Yeah.
Even if I have to bring out the big guns.
Yeah. Especially if you have to bring out the big guns.
Yeah.
Because that's all you being aware enough to make conscious choices, to truly be making conscious choices. That all this stuff on the outside is not, it's the matrix.
Yeah.
It's literally the matrix. It's like taking the red pill and seeing the way that it really is, which is not real.
No, it's ethereal, but I get what you're saying. And it's just, it really takes choice from an external behavior to an internal activity.
Yes.
Right? Like,
it doesn't have the boundaries and the walls.
I'm still learning how to get rid of those, man.
And yeah, that's the key. This whole enmeshment and this whole societal thing are literally walls of thinking. They're shut doors. And one of the things that we teach is we teach the language in our society. The language in our society is built to control, to put controls on other people and to give someone power to control someone else.
But isn't there like a healthy sense of belonging that this is a counterfeit for? Does that even exist?
Very much so.
Right?
Yes. However, that sense of belonging is just neurochemicals.
Yeah.
The sense of belonging that we're taught is based off of what's going on the outside, what other people say, do, whatever our external experiences. But the sense of belonging is a neurochemical mix of certain things that give us that feeling that we are unconsciously creating because of our patterns that society has built into us. And it comes out in our language. So as we speak, we use language that shows us where these walls are. So even when you described your story with your son, my brain is doing this so long.
I know,
that
bring it on.
I'm like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
boom.
tell
Those
me,
are all your
what did I
doors
say?
that were just slammed shut.
Yeah.
That you couldn't see past. You couldn't open the door. Like the way that you see that scenario has so many walls and so many closed doors that you don't have the key to. That you're just frustrated. You're like, freak. What?
Yeah, no,
You know,
no kidding.
Yeah. And you know, and again, the key is understanding all those little pieces, right? And where in our language, because you know, we have a whole list of words that are literally words that shut doors. Like your door is shut. Now, sometimes you want your door shut. Sometimes you don't care. You don't want to. We only have so much. You know, these people are competing for the one thing that we have that has all the value, and that's our attention. Like where our attention is, they're pulling our attention, and our attention's going that way. So we have these closed doors that stop us, but we want some closed doors because we want our attention to where we want it based off of what
focus.
we care about. Where our focus is typically programmed into us. But what we want to do is undo all the programming that controls our focus and then choose into the focus.
Which makes me think about this whole behavior as very unvindictive.
Oh.
Because if we,
Interesting.
you know, we've seen behaviors where we say, F you, I'm going to go do what I want. But the attention is still,
You still said
you're
F you.
still focusing on them by
Yeah.
giving them the negative energy, right?
Yep.
But if I can sit there and peacefully say, I'm just so focused on my own happiness that those other doors just closed on their own.
Yeah.
It's not vindictive. I'm not sending energy that way. It's very, I am just so focused on what makes me happy.
Yeah. And it's typical initially when someone discovers some of this at a surface level, they start to discover, holy crap, I've been enmeshed. Like my family, my religion, my workspace, my career, whatever the groups are that they're in, my social circles, whatever. I've been so enmeshed in that. Holy crap. And then they tend to see all the damage it did and then rebel.
Yes. Rebellion is huge. And it's
And
just the same thing in the other direction.
It's the same thing in the other direction. They're still there.
Yeah.
Like they came to an awareness, but then they went the other direction, which is still under the control.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So it's literally about just getting that. And that's what our model's intend to do. It's intended to just neutralize the whole thing. Just look at it as an experience and give us the opportunity to then just choose which our experience going forward. Like just choose every one of them. Choose people. And you know, you'll start to realize there's some people in our lives that just don't mesh with our goals and where we want to go. And no harm or foul because they have theirs too. And that's totally great. As a matter of fact, it's great that we separate. It's better for both of us to go in a different direction as friends or as whatever our partnership was. Like it is way better because we were only throwing wrenches in each other's path and obstacles and all these different things. So and then we draw in people that have similar goals and they're on a similar path. And then it's just flowing and it's just free. And we're not upset with anybody. We're just like,
we're so focused on our own peace.
But we project our beliefs onto other people. So we think our way is the way. So in a community, we think, well, our way is the way. If you go outside of that, oh my, you're doing it wrong. There's something wrong with it. But there absolutely is nothing wrong because they're a different being with a different way of seeing. Man, I've studied these personality types like crazy, like thoroughly. the Myers-Briggs personality
Oh,
types
yeah.
especially.
I traced it back to Hippocrates in 600 BC with
Yes.
his work of these 4 different personas. And it's been packaged differently since then, but
Yeah.
it's this basic 4 energies.
Yes. Yes. I totally. Yeah, I did the same thing. I
I'm
researched
like, where did this
back.
come from?
Like, where did this come from? I always want to go back to the source. And,
Yeah.
And when you get to the source, oftentimes you get new insights and
Yeah.
new ways of seeing. And it's amazing because it's literally out of what areas of the brain are active more in one person's brain than another person's brain.
And you can bring that down to chemicals like nitrogen
Yep,
and oxygen and all of
exactly.
these.
And
yeah.
all the neurochemicals and where they tend to be in the brain and what.
Yeah.
So you got
How
these different
fascinating.
personalities and they're experiencing life right next to another person, but the way they're experiencing completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely different. Like one of those is the difference between someone who's more of a thinker and someone who's more of a feeler,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there's people who feel or think internally or feel or think externally.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets this complexity, right? And so someone who is an external thinker, they're very logical and their logic lies on the outside.
Mhm.
They're very good at engineering. That's Elon Musk, right?
Mhm.
Engineering, understanding things, putting things together, fixing. And then they look at someone else trying to do it and they're like, what are you doing? Like, you are like, you're doing
That's
this
not how
wrong.
you
Like,
do it.
like, you don't get this. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, they don't. It's okay. That's not how their brain works. It's working another way. And it's bringing value in a way yours isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And theirs is highly valuable, but you don't value it because that's not how you're programmed.
Yeah.
That's not how your nervous system created
It doesn't
the value
satisfy
system.
this dopamine.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
satisfy it. So let them be. Not only let them be, support them. Give them love and support and hold them up and show them to the world because there's other people who value what they're doing.
Yes.
Their version of it and learn from them and take from it. But don't get caught up in what's what because you're not going to get it. You're not going to fathom what they're capable of fathoming. If you're someone who's very logical and you think, in terms of the external and the organization of things, then someone comes along who's really spiritual and in tune and sees and feels energies or what, you're not going to get it. You
Yeah,
might not. It's
yeah.
okay. But don't think anything about what they're doing as if there's something off or wrong or bad or whatever.
In Richard and I both, they were in our final and second marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we both went through a divorce.
Mhm.
And I went through a divorce with 5 kids looking up and observing and watching this whole thing.
Wow.
And I knew, with my limited knowledge at the time, I knew that the decision to separate needed to come from a place of peace rather than a place of anger. And I started off by doing exactly what you're saying, by telling myself, we are just, even though there, in my judgment, had wrongs been committed, really it was a series of, and it sounds like I'm sugarcoating it, but a series of lifestyle decisions that didn't bring me happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in our separation, the most peaceful way that I felt to deal with that is my values are not aligned with their values, right? They're just separate, and I can only run so far with someone whose values are not aligned. And so for my kids, now I'm saying, okay, you have kind of a benefit of seeing 2 households who operate from different value spaces, but I want you to evaluate and say, I'm not going to say I'm better or he's better or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I want you to evaluate and say, which one do you think would make you happy? Because there's probably gold from both books.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You're actually giving
Trying.
them more options and choices, right? Our brain can't choose something it can't see.
It doesn't understand it.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no way. As a matter of fact, that's one of the benefits to mixed families and divorces.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, well, benefits to divorces. Yeah,
Well,
there's a ton
there
of
are.
benefits, actually.
There are. Yeah.
There's tons. And one of them is that they get this diversity. They get this ability to see if people aren't running around with hate and anger and resentment and all those other things, it can be incredibly valuable. People
Yeah.
say statistically it's, better to stay together even if you're not that happy, blah, blah, blah. It's
I don't
like,
know about that.
that's because people don't get it. And they're
Yeah.
running in anger and fear, and they're playing the part, and they're trying to make everyone else happy. They're doing all this stuff on the outside. But once you get past all that, you could turn it into something that's magnificent for the children.
Yeah.
Incredible, full of love, all those things.
That's our hope. And what you said about the button, I think it reveals what the button is, right? And I've talked about this with the kids, and they've even come to me. They're so young, but they're so smart.
Yeah.
And they're like, if you and Dad hadn't split, we would never had dad. I mean, they're
Yeah.
richer coming to their lives, right? They would never know the grandparents that they know. Like they love their stepmom's grandparents. They're so cute. They're adorable people. And I was like, yeah, we paid a price. We paid the cost of divorce was heavy.
Yeah.
And it's not one I recommend if you can avoid it, right? But it's again back to this whole idea of circumstances. This was a circumstance within my control. I could choose to go through a divorce or I could choose to not. That was partially within my control. Other people's behaviors are not.
Yeah.
And so while the other people's behaviors were such that I didn't want to be around it, that's when I opted in for this thing. And I had to make it very clear to my kids, this was a choice that I made. I chose this. I wouldn't like recommend this path for people. So please learn the lessons. And this button you're talking about, if I could go back to the way things were, what would you do to prevent me pushing that button? I don't think the kids would want to go back.
No.
I really don't, because it means giving
Good
up all of the
job.
beautiful people.
Good
We're
job.
trying.
Good
We're
job.
trying. I'm trying not to mess them up too bad. You know? But it makes me think about even the decisions that I make on a regular daily basis. I've been really introspective this year so far and thinking about how am I spending this moment? Am I liking how I'm spending this moment?
Exactly. Because if you're not, it's your programming.
Yeah.
Period. I don't care if you're in a jail cell. I don't care if you're being tortured. I don't care what's happening to you. You literally, a big portion of what I studied was Captain Coffee is his name. And he went down over enemy lines and got put in a jail cell, a 4x6 jail cell, and was there for 7 years.
What?
7
Is this
years.
a true story?
It's a true story. You can
What?
go read his book about it. And he figured out a lot of what we use in our model. And he figured out what's going on in his head. He figured out it was all him. Everything was him. How he felt about being tortured, how he felt about the fact that he divulged information that he wasn't supposed to, that was damaging to his country, and being starved and sick and stripped and cold and all those things for 7 years. But he overcame it at such a level that when he came back, he became a public speaker and he wrote a book. And in the book, he said, those were the best 7 years
That's
of my life.
insane.
Because he got so in control of what he was experiencing. And he became fascinated.
With no coaching.
With no coaching. Because he figured out a real key point that we teach in our model that is a foundation of how to move forward through experiences. And it changes everything.
I
It
need to read
literally
this book.
changes everything. And I'll tell you, this reprogramming process is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You can reprogram everything. I reprogrammed the flavor of foods. I took foods that made
You're like,
me,
let's just mess with this.
exactly.
This isn't sour. It's
I was like-
delicious.
Exactly. And I took something that was so gross to me, it made me gag and throw up. And I made it one of my favorite foods.
I'm determined that's why people drink beer.
Oh, yeah.
Because I grew up next to the Coors factory and that thing smelled so bad.
Yeah.
But they reprogrammed it. And that's the beauty of it, is that what you're talking about is a tool that is available to us whenever and that we're using all the time, just mostly unconsciously.
Yep.
I can train myself to think beer is delicious.
Yep.
But if I can train myself to think that, then I can train myself to think that, Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, very parallel to the experience with Captain Coffee that you just shared. Then I can train myself to get through this next winter, and I can train myself to
Not just get through.
Yeah.
You can get through this next winter and feel like it was the best vacation of your life.
Okay.
So when I say we go deep, we're talking we go to the extreme.
Yeah.
So when you say, okay, so someone, what's the worst possible thing that could happen to somebody?
My worst nightmare, my
Yeah,
recurring
there we go.
nightmare, is that there's an earthquake here in Utah and the roads are so badly broken. They're like, it gets me emotional just thinking about it. The roads are so badly broken and I'm away from my kids and I can't get back to them. And I can't ensure that they're safe. That's my worst nightmare.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So when you start to understand the inner workings and the ecosystem of your neurology, and you realize that by having that fear is going to put you in a scenario where you will no way be able to help your children. You will toss that response.
Yeah.
You'll toss it in the trash and you'll replace it with something totally different. As a matter of fact, you'll jump out of the rubble of your fallen home and you go, yeah, it freaking happened. Yes, that's what I needed. And then this juice that's in you puts you in a place where you can access data in your brain that you never would access if you would have taken
I know
the other
Kung
path.
Fu.
Exactly. You download whatever it is that makes you capable. It's our brain thinks it's being successful. That's really what it comes down to. It's a delusion or an illusion that we're being successful when we're actually doing the opposite. We're failing hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think that, we can reframe as soon as we have the depth of understanding of how powerful the reframe is to the scenarios, you can reframe them like that.
Yeah.
I'm doing a group session tonight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to go and have a group of people. There are probably 50 to 70 people. And these people are going to come up with life's most difficult, complex things. And the people who've been going for a while, they're going to be giggling inside because they're like, this has completely changed this person. Like their whole thing is going to just shift so big. And the person there is just, they're dying. They're like, this is overtaking my life. It's the most horrible thing. It's the horrific.
Yeah.
And then, minutes later, everyone in the room is laughing and we're all joking. And that person has got this super clear vision of what happens in their brain, what's going to happen, and what will make them capable to succeed.
What I love about what I'm hearing is it's, as we know, there's an authentic and a counterfeit to everything, right? And I have lived and heard and studied the counterfeit of what this is. And instead of reframing the history or the trauma, it's rewriting it and rescripting it and pretending it didn't happen so that we don't have to feel the pain of it. And that's terrifying to me because then when it happens again, you still have the trigger because you didn't reframe it. We re-walked through the experience. The experience happened. We can't change that, but we can change how we feel about it, even retroactively. And what I love about what I'm hearing from you is my goal is to be as happy as my heavenly parents are. But that doesn't mean that they don't choose into feelings of mourning sometimes. We're instructed. And I feel like I feel good when I'm able to mourn with those that mourn and feel sad with people that feel sad and carry that burden with them. It doesn't mean that I'll never feel sadness again. It doesn't mean that I'll never feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the gamut of emotions is so beautiful. Sadness has beauty in it. That grief has beauty in it. It means that there was love. And being more like my Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother means my baseline for joy is very high. And when I choose into another emotion, it's done so almost accompanied by gratitude in a way.
Yes. I was just going to point out that there is a really big difference of being the victim to your sadness and choosing into your sadness.
Yeah.
Choosing into an emotion that is typically undesirable.
Sure. We can construct it as negative.
Yeah. So if you choose into it for a purpose and you have a purpose and you're moving towards that purpose, that's completely different than having the emotion because you're trying to escape something.
Right.
It's neurologically a totally different experience. And as a matter of fact, they can measure tears. They can measure the chemicals in tears.
Yes, I've read about this. And even the crystalline structure of tears is different. You can tell betrayal tears versus, okay.
So
this is cool.
This neurochemistry is literally the answer. It is the key. Understanding that stuff at the level that we can be in control of and super aware. This model, once you learn the model, if you talk to anyone who's learned the model, they will say, it is so simple, it's ridiculous. But to get there and to get to that level to understand is somewhat complex.
Well, we have to detangle everything we tangled up.
Not everything. We just have to have an experience of detangling so we know what it's like.
Yeah, okay.
Because there's an endless amount of things to detangle.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of learning the process and loving the process. That's the difference. When you start to do it because you love it, not because you need it.
Yeah.
Not because you got to do it. Not because, I got to get, most people, they go out and they set all their goals. And the reason for their goals is to avoid suffering and pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost always.
Yeah.
That's, even if they say, well, no, I'm going to go have fun. And you question them more, they're going out to have fun is to get away from not
Yeah, so I
having
never
fun.
have to do this again.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
I don't have to go to work that day, or whatever
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thing
yeah.
is. You know, there's stuff. They're oftentimes just trying to get away from things. Most of the time. If I drill deep enough, they'll finally realize, oh, whoa, I am actually trying to get away from something. It's not that I just love vacations and want to go on vacations. I'm actually love vacations because I'm getting away from, or I'm escaping, or I'm avoiding, or whatever. And that part of the nervous system is totally different. When you're avoiding something and you're pursuing something, completely different.
It's the difference.
Areas of the brain,
Oh.
neurochemicals, completely different thing, right?
Someone said to me last week, it's the difference between motivation and inspiration.
Mm.
Motivation is that running from, and inspiration is the pulling toward.
Oh, yeah, I like
It's really
that.
stark for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to kind of to go back to something we were talking about earlier, when we talk about relationships, especially in communities and all these other things, there's a big thing going around that everyone talks about, and that is forgiveness. Forgiveness. People need to forgive. And here's the thing. The only people who need to forgive are the accusers. So if you have patterns of accusing, then you're the kind of person who needs forgiveness.
Mm.
But if you get rid of accusing, you never have to forgive because no one's done anything.
Yeah.
You haven't accused them of anything. There's nothing there. They're just being them. They're just doing what they're programmed to do from their childhood that they didn't really choose into. And now you're like, well, they're making the choice now, but what's that all based off of? It's all based off of this programming that was put into them that they didn't choose. So they're kind of not choosing. And who cares? What's it going to do for you to be the accuser? What does it do for us to be the one that accuses? Because the accuser usually also takes the part of the victim.
The prosecutor. Yeah. I had a friend who recently went through a court case and won.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're talking legal system here.
Mm-hmm.
And he won, and the judgment was due to be repaid back to him, but the defendant didn't have anything left. So he won, but he literally said, it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything because whatever I was suing for to be made whole was not financially made whole. So now great. Whoop-de-doo, I won.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of this legal system because I have to make an accusation and I feel justified in doing that. But there's a difference between, in my experience, forgiveness, which means, like you in your definition, I'm no longer accusing someone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making myself better because of my circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
versus willingness to share proximity once again. Right?
Oh.
I can not accuse. I can let you be you. You're doing the best that you can with the light that you've been given
Mm-hmm.
and the knowledge and experience that you have, but that doesn't mean I need to be close to you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And nor is it a need for forgiveness. You're not accusing. You're just making choices.
Right.
You're allocating your resources and deciding where your focus based off of your agency is. So that's totally what you want to be doing and
Yeah.
choosing.
Yeah. And it makes me think of this concept of right and wrong.
Mm.
And I'm curious as your perspective on this. And I know we're a little over on time, but I want to dive into that just a little bit. I want to understand what you feel like the concept of right and wrong is, because I know what mine is, right? I think murder is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's wrong. But then you go to a battlefield and someone is coming at you, and in order to preserve your life, you must self-defend and end someone else's life.
Mm-hmm.
Is it murder now? Okay, so forget that. Now is the war wrong? And when it comes to right and wrong, I believe that there are hard rights and hard wrongs, but in order to discover them, in my mind, it needs a follow-up of, in order to blank, what is right and wrong?
Which makes it not right or wrong.
Oh, man.
If you have a follow-up, if there
Yeah.
has to be a follow-up, that means you haven't. As a matter of fact, we use right and wrong in our model to describe what generalizations are and what we call closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
So when you close a door, oh, that's right or wrong. Again, it's not, closing a door isn't one or another. It's just it.
Mm-hmm.
If you close the door, you've closed the door. You're not going to continue on with what you just said, right? You're not going to address anymore. Some things you don't want to address anymore. So you could call them right or wrong because you don't want to go there. You don't care. You don't care to, for whatever your reason is, for your goals, whatever. You can use right or wrong all you want. But is there really a right or wrong? If you can always add more to the story, it's
I
not
believe
complete.
There's always actions and consequences. You can't pick up half a stick.
Definitely.
You know, you have,
Yeah.
I use that from John, by the way. Thank you, brother, by the way. If I pick up a choice, I pick up its consequence,
Yeah.
right? Eventually,
Yeah.
even if the duration is really long.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But does that make it right or wrong? And is the
I still think murder
consequence
is wrong.
good or bad
I still think murder is wrong,
in
You
every
know?
scenario?
but then is it defined as murder? For like that war example, am I defining it as murder or am I defining it as patriotism? You know, like what is
Exactly.
it?
Yeah.
What is it? You know,
Yeah.
there's a mother bear in me that's like, you infringe upon my family, you infringe upon that right, you
Mhm.
infringe upon my children's life. My husband and I feel the same way. That is wrong, and we will give you some consequences, right? If that
Yeah.
were to take place, and we will put you forth if there's anything
But it
left of
doesn't
you.
mean it's wrong. It just means it doesn't align with your value system, and you have choices, or some would call boundaries, in which you will take action.
Yeah,
That doesn't make anything right or wrong.
I'm gonna have to deep more.
I'm not saying
dive
you're
more into
right
that.
or they're wrong or
Yeah.
anything, because who knows why the guy is infringing? You don't know his story. He could have a whole series of belief systems behind it
Mhm.
that are very well thought out and can make sense for why he's intruding.
That's why a lot of people think that Mein Kampf is scary to read because it is sensical. Have you heard that before? I haven't read it. I
haven't
don't
read it
want to
either.
read it, but my sister read it for a project in junior high or high school, and she's like, "That was creepy because it had logic." It's crazy.
So here's the thing. This is I'm glad we had all this
Yeah.
part right here, because this is where it kind of comes together. It's not about what's right or wrong, and it's not about what's going on. All these little scenarios we've used and all these things that we've talked about are irrelevant to the nervous system. So it's about the individual listening to their nervous system, making choices based off of what they're congruent with in their belief systems. Period. Like, okay, all this other stuff, all this other talk, whatever, doesn't matter. It all comes down to the individual and and them being aligned with their nervous system and their belief system and their foundational. And I'm going to go a little bit here about where this nervous system comes from.
Mhm. Good. I was hoping you would.
Because there is whoever your belief is about who created us,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah.
built this nervous system.
Yeah.
Our nervous system is different than every other animal
Mhm.
because it has a prefrontal cortex. And a prefrontal cortex is a conscious control center over the rest of the nervous system.
Mhm.
So, but we don't know how to use it typically. But learning how to use it puts us in a place where we become like the creator, because the creator built this system to guide us and to teach us and to help us to become like them,
Mhm.
who is a creator.
Mhm.
In other words, we're here, and this nervous system is to teach us how to create.
Yes.
That's ultimately what it's for.
And you know, that's what I thought of when I asked myself the question out loud to you is, where do I find fulfillment? The instant word that came to me was creation.
It's creation. It's the creation. And the first creation, obviously the first creation we have is the one thing we have total control over, and that is ourself.
Mm-hmm.
So our first creation is us. It's creating us. When I meet with these people, they're so far out of themselves and have no connection to themselves. And they find that full connection and complete understanding, like so fully. Their world lights up and their nervous system just, because we're tapping in and we're showing it. See what your nervous system says? See what it says?
Mm-hmm.
See what it says? Now you're seeing it. We're not seeing it. I'm not telling you to do or be anything. I'm telling you I'm just showing you and modeling to you and giving you an experience of tapping into that so you can experience it. Because when you experience it, you're gonna want more, and you're gonna want to keep going.
It's a natural drug system right
It
there.
is. It's a total natural, chemical system lighting you up, and then it lights them up more, and it lights them up more, and it lights them up more. And these people come in, they're just hopeless. They've tried everything. They walk out of there like, holy crap, I have so many options. I could, bring it.
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
come on, world, bring it. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Like I am now in a place where I see and understand this world in such a way that I'm in control. And the first creation is me, and that creation process is my entire life. So I'm never going to arrive, and I don't care because I don't want to. Because if I did,
I mean, it's
what
over.
would I do after that?
Yeah.
It's over. All the fun is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so That's literally what it's about. It's about becoming your true self, creating your true self, actually.
Yeah.
People talk a lot about finding their true authenticity. They're making it.
Mm-hmm.
They're
I agree with
creating
that
it
100%.
by finding their nervous system to teach them and guide them along the way. So that's really what it's about in the end. We don't typically go into that until people are in the program.
Well, just sneak peek. Okay, so where can people learn more about you? We've got a bunch of links that we're going to put in the show notes. Tell everyone that's listening live today, and then everyone's going to watch this later. Where can they find more of you? Where can they learn more about this?
Yeah. So we have, there's a link in there for a landing page that takes you to events that we do. And we do live events. The acronym for Fulfill Life Yourself is FLY.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from it comes from a reoccurring dream from when I was a child that came hundreds of times. But you feel so light after all this is taken off that you literally feel like you're flying. You're flying through life.
That speaks to the pilot in me.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah. It literally is that feeling where everything just comes off and you just like, whoa, there's not all these strings. There's not all this weight. There's not all this stuff. And you feel like you can fly.
Yeah.
And so we call the event Learn to Fly. It's a Learn to Fly event. And it's more of what we've been talking about here. It's more of we go into some of the experience to help people see how it resonates with them. And if they want to continue on and we have a full program that's 3 months. And it's just completely life-changing. And it's created this huge community now and all these other things I didn't think or anticipate happening.
You need a community. We need to be enmeshed.
so and that's the interesting about this community is that communities are created through commonalities.
Right. Exactly.
And the unique thing about this community, which I want for the entire world, is that the commonality is our uncommonality.
Mm.
The value to the differences between us.
Yeah, yeah.
That we can have a room full of people that have totally different backgrounds, different belief systems. Someone comes up with a concept or subject that others completely would normally disagree with, yet they don't have that belief or thought anymore, and they're just supporting the person and helping them work through and without judgment.
That reminds me of that moment in Dead Poet Society. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, when they're marching around in the circle and he's exercising his right not to march, and he's like, "You just illustrated my point."
Yeah.
But he's loved and accepted for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's exactly it. We're all just like cheering everybody on and whatever. We don't care what they're doing because it's their life experience. It's their nervous system going through what it needs to go through to figure out what it needs to figure out. So we do these events. We also have a recorded version of it that somebody can watch if they're not local. But we do the events typically in the Salt Lake Valley. And we do them periodically up and down the Wasatch Front, all the way down into St. George and up into Idaho. But you can come and meet us in person and actually go through some of the process and learn a little bit more than what we've talked about here. But you get to meet people that are there, and you get to hear the most miraculous stories you could ever imagine. Like literally people with OCD that just like switched.
Oh, I like my OCD.
People,
yeah, keep that one.
There's benefits to those patterns. Those patterns are not detrimental necessarily.
Except I'm not infringing on other people. I don't like doing that, but I like it for me.
Yeah. So, and we have YouTube, a YouTube channel. We have Instagram, Facebook. I think we have TikTok. We have most of the stuff that's out there.
Well, guys, if this has made you curious, go check it out. And all of this, when this gets published in the live version, watch for the drop on Sunday. But for those of you that are live here, if you're live here with us, that means you are on LaMonte's channel, and you can go follow him. You can see his stuff. Go check it out right now. If this has sparked your curiosity or made you think, go investigate. Go see for yourself.
Yeah.
Go see what he's up to. Go see what you can be up to if you hang out in proximity. If you're watching this on the podcast, we will have all of those links in the show notes so you can see what it's all about. And learn for yourself, investigate it for yourself, and see if there's some resonance there. And if it is, and then maybe you find a new friend.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And a whole community.
And the whole community.
And have a foundational life change that changes you forever and makes you as successful as you want to be in every area you care about.
So this is a question I'd like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. If God forbid, you left the planet tomorrow, knocking on particle board / wood, right? If there was one phrase that you would need to leave as your mark on the planet, what would it be?
One phrase. Oh, I love that question. But it's a challenge.
It's a hard one.
It's truly all inside of you. All of your experience and everything is up to you. go figure it out.
That's beautiful. I love that. Search for it, find what makes you happy, and go on a journey with me of finding more fulfillment, more joy, and more ways, like you said, that if we're designed to truly to become like however you seem God to be. I know my heavenly parents pretty darn well. And the whole goal is to become like them. We do so in becoming more of us.
Absolutely.
So.
In the creation process of who we want to become.
Yeah.
And it's ever changing.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me and our people today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for blessing us.
Thank you for having me. This is freaking fun.
Oh, good. I know. Isn't it great? I love podcasting.
Yeah.
Friends, you got to go check out everything that's in the show notes. So check out, Richard's going to put everything in the links for you. We'll make sure you have access to everything. And maybe grab one of these upcoming events. Check it out. Thank you for being here on the Marianne Hickman Show, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, what's up? Marianne Hickman here. Hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed that episode. We have some pretty amazing speakers on my podcast, and of course, more to come. If this is something that you enjoyed, guys, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. You guys know what to do. I love your comments, and I respond to every single one of them personally, not a bot or an agency. So if this is something you're enjoying, tell me about it. Tell me your gold nuggets. I want to hear from you. But here's the most important thing I want you to laser in on. I told you about the podcast database. You've probably seen me post about it all over social media. I want to make sure that you get it. So here's what I want you to do. Go to mariannehickman.com/database. Once you put all of your information in there, I'm going to send you the document. You request access to it. Boom, it's unlocked. Once you're in there, my rule of thumb is to apply to 10 podcasts a month. It's very digestible. It's very easy to do. And the database gets updated twice a week. So I want you constantly checking back in there for the next podcast that fits your audience. Thank you for being here. Much love to you, and we'll see you in the next episode.